This is the iPad mini 2021, the newest, the one that I've been waiting for ever since the rumors started. Now, if you've been coming to the channel for the last couple of weeks or my podcast GadgetCast, you know how excited I have been about this little terror of incredible performance. Well, performance is actually what we're going to talk about today because this thing has the newest A15 processor. What that means could be great or could be nothing special. Now, it's funny because a lot of people, when they see this, they think budget tablet, but this is anything but. With USB-C, Apple Pencil 2 support, and the A15 processor, this thing should be an absolute powerhouse in a small package. But what really happens when you test that theory? Is this thing a mini iPad Pro, or is it a mini iPad No? Dad jokes for the win. Well, let's find out together. Right after this!
This is, you know you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing them. And today we're going to talk about the iPad mini and its performance, the A15 versus the M1. Let's get into the video. So I just want to say that this is not a review of the iPad mini. If you want to see me review this fully, leave a comment below and let me know. Hit that like button. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, because at the end of the week, if we get enough views on this video, I'll do it. Because this thing has been on my mind ever since it came through the door when the UPS dropped it off. And part of it is because as a small tablet, it's super powerful, but relatively speaking, what does a powerful small tablet do? And what is its capabilities? So I kind of wanted to test it out against the other most powerful tablet on the market, the M1 iPad Pro, which is what I use to edit videos like this that you're watching right now. I actually have been editing my entire channel on an iPad Pro for a good 2 years now. Now, with the A15 processor, I thought that maybe some things would be faster. And in case you don't know, the A15 processor will be the basis of the next generation M processor. That is to say, the M1 processor that you know and have heard so much about is actually the A14X, which was always going to be in the iPad Pro. So some people were surprised to see an M1 processor in an iPad Pro this past year when Apple announced it. But the reality is it was always going to be that. What was much more impressive is that the M1, aka the A14X, was in laptops and desktops. That was the amazing thing. It wasn't that they somehow put an M1 into an iPad, they put an iPad processor into laptops and desktops. So in reality, some of the differences between this processor and the older processor, the A14X, should be apparent in some type of way. Because the reality is the core portions of the processor itself should be improved on this newer version. The one thing that you might see a difference in is perhaps GPU score, as one of the things that the X series of the A processors is supposedly good at is that. That's one of the big reasons that they even exist. So I wanted to put that to the test. Now for me, I'm not a huge fan of Geekbench scores and stuff. I don't really think that they're very helpful, but I think in this particular case, we need to at least take a look. So I downloaded Geekbench ML. Now I did that because machine learning is such a big part of what so many manufacturers of hardware are kind of pushing into, and Apple being one of them, talking about machine learning this and machine learning that. So what better benchmark than that? So I ran this benchmark on both the iPad mini and the M1 iPad Pro. Now, I kind of expected the CPU score, which you'll see here for the iPad mini, to be higher than the M1 iPad. It wasn't. Now, that was the first surprise because I got to be honest, I think of all the things, that was the thing I was pretty positive was going to have a higher score because I believe that the just general changes year over year would be, significant enough to make that score higher, but it wasn't for some reason. That kind of didn't bode well for the rest of the test. The GPU scores, I wasn't really sure, but I thought maybe the A14X was going to win, and I was right. The iPad mini did pretty well, but the M1 iPad, yeah, it beat it. And finally, the third score here, it's more of the same. The iPad mini and then the M1 iPad Pro. So far, just in benchmarks, which again, don't mean a lot, the iPad mini just lost 3-0 to the M1 iPad Pro. And I gotta say, that did surprise me because with new architecture and a slightly new and faster chip, you would think that it would win at least one, if not the GPU score, and it didn't. So I looked to other things. Well, what about something else? Well, gaming is just another thing you can try, but the problem with gaming is it doesn't necessarily scale like it does on PC. So I downloaded a couple of the more graphic intensive games, Call of Duty Mobile. I tried to set all the settings as high as I could. They went the same on both iPads, so there was nothing that I could change on one that I couldn't change on the other. They both performed exactly the same. There was no performance difference at all, so nothing came of that. And the same thing with Genshin Impact, which, I mean, looks great. It's an incredible game, but again, no real difference between the two. So, and that's not completely surprising considering that they optimize these for iPads that are not as powerful as this, or even iPhones that are not as powerful as this. So no real surprise there. So what's left? So that left one last bit of software, and that is LumaFusion, which is a video editing program that you can get on iOS. Now, some of you say you don't edit videos on your iPads, your iPhones, and that's fine, but it's really the only piece of software that makes any sense to test because it will give you some type of result, and it's a realistic use of the power because the sustained load on the processing when you're rendering and exporting a video will show you differences. And this one I was kind of unsure about. I thought maybe the M1 would win, but I thought it would be very close if it did, and well, it wasn't. So I exported my last video, which I just did about the iPhone 13. You can check that out, link is in the description, on both the iPad mini and the M1 iPad Pro at the same time, and the iPad Pro finished first by about 36 seconds, which is a significant amount of time, especially considering that video was only about 7 minutes long to begin with. So while it was definitely faster than real time, it lagged behind the older processor. Now at this point, I couldn't get the Mini to beat the Pro at anything, and this just really shocked me. Now, in some ways it makes sense if you're getting a Pro version of something, and then of course the Mini, which is not a Pro version of anything, you would be, okay, yeah, Travis, I expect that. But again, the processor is completely new with new architecture, and you would think it would be better. So I had some questions, and I went to the one person that I thought might know an answer, Rene Ritchie. Rene's amazing, has an incredible channel, is incredibly knowledgeable, and this is what he had to say. It's downclocked on the Mini, so it should be about the same as an A14 Air, which is the iPad Air, the A14 that came out just recently, the one last year, but with newer encode decode blocks and an extra GPU. M1 should smoke it like the A12Z iPad Pro smoked the A14. Now he's talking about the 2020 version of the iPad Pro beating out the iPad Air that just recently came out because many more cores to throw at problems, which is his way of saying with more cores comes more power. So what does this mean at the end of the day? It really doesn't mean anything because the people who are going to buy an iPad mini, this really isn't going to affect any of them. The things that make the iPad mini awesome, it doesn't mean that it has to beat the iPad Pro, a much more expensive tablet that's supposed to do completely different things. That shouldn't be the expectation. I thought maybe it might beat it in one or two kind of areas, which it doesn't, but that's fine. You're not paying as much as you would for an iPad Pro. But what do you think? Leave me a comment below. Make sure you check out one of these videos. I actually watched some other people reviewing the iPad mini. And if you want me to review the iPad mini, you better share this video so I can get these views. I'll see you next time. Peace and love.